Calling it quits, a prominent Kashmiri politician resigns in protest at unrest in Indian-administered Kashmir. So what will it take to restore peace? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the programme. I'm Martine. Now, it's the worst unrest for years in Indian-administered Kashmir. Weeks of protests, more than 80 people killed and thousands wounded. The trigger was the killing of a popular rebel fighter by Indian security forces. That was in July. Tension between Kashmiris and the Indian government was already high over accusations of human rights abuses. And now, one of the region's leading politicians has resigned over the killing of civilians. We'll speak to our guests in just a moment. First, let's have this report from Osama bin Javed.
For 2 months, these streets in Indian-administered Kashmir have remained under curfew. Security forces have blocked movement, and mobile phones, internet and the media have all been restricted. Khurram Pervez works for the rights group Jammu and Kashmir Coalition of Civil Society. He was stopped from travelling to a session of the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva.
I was perhaps not allowed because they fear the kind of work which I and my organization have been doing. They feel that we have been able to document the crimes perpetrated by Indian state in a substantive manner, and this documentation is being shared by us with the international community. They feel that our work will influence the international opinion and it will generate sympathy for the people of Jammu and Kashmir. They do not want any kind of international exposure on Kashmir. The High Commissioner for Human Rights, in its very bold statement, the way they wanted access for Kashmir and the access which has been denied by Government of India.
India insists Kashmir is an internal problem and blames the rise on separatist sentiment on Pakistan.
India's being world's largest democracy has its own means, and all-party delegation has visited. Our forces, I also said, have shown maximum restraint. So all in all, the entire political spectrum is working very hard.
But these government claims of normality have been rejected by opposition leaders in Kashmir. A ruling party politician has resigned. Tariq Kara holds Prime Minister Modi's BJP and his own party responsible for the ongoing violence.
As a mark of protest on moral grounds against the brutal policies of BJP at centre and state government's complete sellout and surrender before them, I have decided to disassociate myself from the primary membership of People's Democratic Party and from the membership of Parliament, to which I was elected from Srinagar Parliamentary Constituency in 2014.
The number of dead and injured continues to climb here. The 2-month shutdown and curfew has driven many from the streets, but it's failed to address the anger that forced many Kashmiris to protest in the first place. Osama bin Javed, Al Jazeera.
Well, the seeds of the current Kashmir conflict were planted almost 70 years ago when India and Pakistan gained independence from Britain. They've been engaged in a tug-of-war ever since. Kashmir is divided between the two countries and the internal borders have never been universally agreed. And that's led to 3 major wars and frequent skirmishes. In 1949, the United Nations called for a referendum to decide if Kashmir should stay in India or join Pakistan. But conditions prior to the vote were never met and the referendum didn't happen. Kashmiri separatists have regularly fought with riot police since the 1950s. With around 12 million citizens, Kashmir is the only state in India with a Muslim majority. All right, we can now talk on the phone from Srinagar to the man who has recently resigned, Tariq Hamid Kara. He's the founding member of the People's Democratic Party and the Srinagar Member of Parliament. And as I say, he's resigned from both his party post as well as his parliamentary seats. Thank you very much indeed for talking to us. Can you tell us specifically why you have decided to take this dramatic action of resigning your post?
You see, it's not a dramatic action. It's my call of the conscience. Let me tell you that People's Democratic Party was floated in 1999, it had certain guiding principles that it would facilitate resolution of Kashmiri issue within the parameters of the constitution, and the party would act as a facilitator between India and Pakistan.
Right.
Number two.
So, sorry,
Yeah.
we haven't got a huge amount of time, and so I just wanted you to focus, please, if you can, on why have you resigned from your party first, and then why have you resigned your parliamentary seat?
It was against, I have been consistently against the unethical and unholy alliance between PDP with BJP, which is a communal party. And for the last 16 months, I have been requesting as well as warning my party for the dire consequences of cobbling into an unholy alliance. So after my request was not given any heed, in the meantime, during these last 2 months, when an upheaval, a popular upheaval was there, and the naked brutalities on my people over here, along with the facilitation of PDP. So I took the call of my conscience and resigned from my party. Resigned from my party as well as from the parliament.
And how would you describe the current situation in Indian-administered Kashmir?
You see, situation over here is that it has been more than 2 months now. Everything has come to standstill. There are security forces unabatedly, brutally killing the people over here, and it would not be out of place to say that it's worse than the Nazi forces, which would even be ashamed today. And on top of it, that the complete sellout and surrender before RSS-backed BJP, it is totally out of control, and the state government has, I would say that, totally failed as far as dealing with the situation is concerned.
You've described it as an unholy alliance between your party and the BJP, the ruling BJP party, but this is how the people of Indian-administered Kashmir voted.
No, they didn't vote for this alliance. In fact, when we sought votes from the people, it was against the BJP. PDP, in very unequivocal votes, sought vote for its candidates to refrain BJP from the corridors of power, lest it would decimate our distinctive political, constitutional, cultural, administrative, and even religious identity as the only Muslim majority state in India.
Tariq Hamid Kara, so I have to ask you then, what is your resignation likely to achieve? Aren't you really abandoning your constituents, those people who voted for you to represent them at a time, arguably, when they need you the most?
Well, I would admit that I have failed to protect my people because I could not help them neither in parliament nor on the ground. It was unethical for me to hold a chair where I could not help my people. Moreover, I'm trying to build a pressure, a constitutional pressure over the government of India so that my people could be saved from death and destruction.
And how do you intend to manage that now? Now you no longer have a parliamentary seat.
In my resignation document, I have thrown a request as well as an appeal to all the fellow public representatives, and I have left it to their conscience that they should decide it as per their conscience, that whether they would like to side the brutal killings or they would like to side the people, their own people, and efforts to save their people by way of creating a movement by such people who are called as mainstream people, mainstream politicians who have sworn by the Constitution of Jammu and Kashmir as well as by the Constitution of India.
Tariq Hamid Kara, thank you very much for talking to us on Inside Story. All right, let's bring in our guests now. Sanjay Kak is a Kashmiri documentary filmmaker whose most recent film is Jashan-e-Azadi, How We Celebrate Freedom, and the author of the book Until My Freedom Has Come, the newer Intifada in Kashmir. We have Sreeram Chaulia, who's Professor and Dean at the Jindal School of International Affairs. And we have Prem Shankar, who's a journalist and author of Kashmir 1947, The Origins of a Dispute. Welcome to you all. Can I start with you then, Prem Shankar? I'm just wondering how you would characterise this moment in the history of Indian-administered Kashmir. Everything seems to be pointing to perhaps the worst crisis that the region has experienced for many, many years.
This is the worst crisis by far. It's not a crisis that should have taken anyone by surprise. There's been a monumental failure of intelligence in the government. This was a new government. It believed when it came in that the militancy was over and the problem was entirely economic, which was not true. In their alliance with the PDP, they were told explicitly that it's not true. They wouldn't listen. And so when this build-up of anger among the youth at a sort of a relentless pressure from the police, which never ever ended, finally exploded, they say they were taken by surprise. They shouldn't have been taken by surprise. I have been in Kashmir a month ago. I was there for 3 or 4 days. And one thing everyone is absolutely unanimous on is we've got to see it through this time. We have been trying for peace for ever since 2002, when there was an election and the government changed, and peace really did come to Kashmir at that time. Since then, things have gone back from 2008 onwards. We've been trying for peace ever since, and we're not getting it. Periodically there are problems in Jammu or something. There's a communal flare-up somewhere, and we have to suffer. Everything is closed down as it is today, and people start dying. And this time we're going to see it through. That is the feeling in Kashmir. And the government must accept this.
Okay.
Otherwise, there will be no. I cannot imagine what will happen.
Let's pick up on that point in just a minute. In the meantime, let's talk to Sanjay Kak, who himself is a Kashmiri. How would you characterise the nature of the unrest at the moment? Many observers have pointed out that it has changed. It's hardened within the last 5 years.
I don't know if hardened would be the correct word. I think that in the main, what is different about what's happened this time is that the unrest is largely in the countryside, which was in some senses considered by the Indian establishment as a region which had been pacified. And in the public discourse in India and in the mainstream media, the resistance was seen to come from sort of disaffected members of the urban youth. But this time what we are seeing, especially in South Kashmir, is a complete unanimity amongst the population and their ability to actually keep the state out. All reports from the ground seem to point that both police and paramilitary are unable to move out, not because they are afraid of attacks by militants, but because entire villages and tens of thousands of people are coming out and preventing them from operating in that area. So I think that in a sense, I think it would not be far-fetched to say that what is happening in Kashmir has finally taken on the characteristics of a peasant rebellion.
So, Sanjay, very briefly at this stage, if you wouldn't mind, tell us what you think Kashmiris, or the majority of Indian-administered Kashmiris, want. What do they want?
Well, you know, this is a question which is thrown so often at Kashmir and Kashmiris, and if we are talking about the present unrest, then that question is always answered with one word, which is Azadi, which is freedom. And it's often the second question which is asked is that what do you mean by that? And I think that the inability to find a concrete tangible answer to that question comes from the fact that the circumstances are simply not made possible for people to freely express what they think and what they feel. If you look at the present moment, I mean, there has been 70 days of uninterrupted sort of public upheaval. There has been continuous curfew for 60 days. And yet there is not a single attempt on the part of the state to actually reach out to people and suggest that this is being seen as anything more than a tantrum. I mean, their current military operation, which has just been sort of announced very discreetly, is called Operation Calm Down, you know, which is seriously not a way of taking a political sort of reading of what is going on.
Okay, I'll come back to you in just a moment, but Sreeram, Chaulia, it sounds very much as though the government in New Delhi is being accused of making fundamental mistakes, responding to the discontent in the Kashmir region, not with dialogue and efforts to calm people's concerns, but instead with paramilitary forces, additional forces, and with crackdowns on the way people communicate and indeed the times in which they can venture out of their houses. A curfew's been in place for 2 months now. Fundamental mistakes have been made.
I don't think so. You know, my own view is that we have to see some of these protesters and the agitators as political actors. They are not just spontaneous, you know, people on the ground who are alienated. That has always been the case in the Kashmir Valley, even through the best and worst of times. What we are seeing often is many of these stone pelters as well as agitators have links across the border with Pakistan, and many of them are also financed and fueled by the Hurriyat Conference, which is a separatist outfit that refuses to participate in mainstream Indian democratic
politics. But would you
politics.
accept, I mean,
So
would you accept that the growing, the spread of the protest, the growing, the sheer volume of the people who are prepared to turn out, throwing stones or not, are now including women, they're including children, whereas in the past it was able-bodied young men who would only venture onto the streets. This time it looks as though the discontent is spreading to a wider section of the community.
Well, certainly there is, you know, disenchantment, and for various reasons. There are economic reasons. Sanjay just mentioned that the countryside is up in arms. There are problems. I mean, youth unemployment has increased over time, and then over and above all this, there is a military presence and so on. I'm not denying that. But the response of the Indian state, I think, has been characterized as, you know, plain brutal and, you know, lacking in human touch and so on. I don't think so. What has actually happened is there is a kind of a tit-for-tat war that goes on the streets, and I've seen this in Kashmir many times. A lot of the mobs are actually financed and armed to some extent, and many of them get paid to turn out to fight. Okay. So it's not that, and then of course it spirals out of control. Once you have, you know, a counter reaction by the security forces, people get killed, and then, you know, insurgency and counterinsurgency logic start coming in. So I think we have to see this as a political process rather than simply a people up against a brutal state. I think this is actually politicized, and you have to look at the regional actors that play and who are fueling and financing some of these actions.
Let's take that point and put it to Prem, Shankar, Jal in New Delhi, because what we have here is an allegation that so many of these people who are prepared to face the security forces in Indian-administered Kashmir are actually paid to turn out on the streets, and they're all part of a political conspiracy. And I see you shaking your head at that.
Well, no, I was both smiling and shaking my head, because actually Sanjay Kak and Sreeram Chaulia are both absolutely correct, but up to a point. There has been instigation, there has been for a very long time. The issue that the question that we must ask ourselves is, why has it exploded now? There was the same instigation took place in 2010. 119 youth were killed by the police again. I was furious. I mean, I cannot tell you how furious I was then, because I do not believe that the real problem is whatever you do, even if stones are being thrown at you, and believe you me, I've been pelted in Kashmir, and I know how dangerous it is. You cannot answer with bullets. Stones can injure, stones can maim, but they can't kill. And that is the difference between what the state is doing and what the people are doing. And from 2010, there's been attempts to get modern equipment. Do you know what the police have in Kashmir today? They have cricket pads to save their feet. They have rather ancient helmets with thin plastic visors, and they have bamboo shields. through which they
Right.
cannot see
Okay.
when they're protecting themselves. I mean, look at it. This is the same thing that we had in 1897.
All right, okay.
I mean, you know, this is the kind of failure of the Indian state. That's, yeah.
All
okay,
right.
fine.
No, so I think we've got an idea of how serious this particular moment is. Sanjay, can I come to you and ask you then about prospects for dialogue? So far, the Kashmiri groups have not seemed terribly keen, terribly willing to engage in any kind of dialogue. The Modi government sent up a delegation just a week or so ago, and they were met with pretty much silence.
You know, I think that people have expressed their quite clear contempt for the theatrics of these periodic delegations that fly in from Delhi every time there's a crisis. Mr. Jha referred to 2010. There was a similar exercise by parliamentarians. The government appointed a set of interlocutors who spent a whole year and met thousands of people. They created a report which was not even tabled in parliament. It has not even been read. It has not been acted upon. So I think that every time there's a crisis, to try and kind of create a photo opportunity out of landing at the doors of various political formations or meeting local people, I think people are through this time.
All right.
I think it's very significant that this time that people are just not, they're not biting.
Okay, let's go back to Sreeram now. And can I put to you the words of Zaid Rad Al Hussein, the UN Human Rights Commissioner, who says efforts to duck or refuse legitimate scrutiny raise an obvious question. What precisely are you hiding from us? These are the words that the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights has levelled at the Indian government. He's requested that some of his observers can gain entry to Indian-administered Kashmir. He's been refused that. Why?
Historically, India has, demurred from internationalizing the issue. And India is actually a much bigger player than Pakistan and believes that it can resolve the issue in its favor by virtue of its comparative advantages. So the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, well, he will express concern and will want access. But I think the Indian state sees this as a kind of, sovereignty issue. And as something that Indian state believes that it has a democratic mechanisms on the ground in the form of an elected government. 65% of the Kashmiris turned up to vote for this government, and the Indian state believes that it has enough of some kind of a legitimate framework through which it can resolve these problems without bringing in foreign forces. Historically also, India feels that it had been cheated when it took the issue to the UN in the first place, when Jawaharlal Nehru did it, our first prime minister, way back in 1947. So I think they are afraid of this because they believe that this is simply going to excessively politicize it even more, because then Pakistan will lobby for it and will try to bring in the OIC and Gulf countries.
Okay.
But Mr. Modi, interestingly, has also been bringing in the Gulf countries. And what you notice is diplomatically, this issue is not making as much noise or disgruntlement against India as it used to before. So I think New Delhi feels it's relatively confident it can handle this pressure from the UN, because the big powers have not said much about this.
Sorry to rush you. We are running out of time. Can I give the final word to Prem? Because it looks as if this intractable problem is likely to continue for the near future. Do you see any possibilities, any wiggle room, if you like, that could yield some positive results? Very quickly, if you would.
There is huge wiggle room. First of all, please release the Hurriyat leaders from jail. How do you expect them to talk to you when you keep them in jail? That's what happened when the all-party delegation went there. This has not been played up in the media, but this is a fact. And they're still in jail. Second, once you've released them, for God's sake, please tell them, why don't you tell us what you want? We never ask the Kashmiris what they want. We've never, they want two things. They want politically self-empowerment, and they want economically to have the links they have with India today. Why is it so difficult to put the two together? It's so easy when we have a constitutional framework for this in the 1947, in the Constitution and the Delhi Agreement of 1952. It's all there. What you have is a government that is ideologically blinded by its own positions taken as far back as 1949, from which they are unable to get away.
I'm afraid, gentlemen, I'm going to have to close the argument now. We will revisit this problem, I'm sure, in the near future. But thank you all very much indeed. Prem, Shankar, Sreeram, Chaulia, Sanjay Kak, thank you all very much. And as ever, thank you for watching. You can see the programme again anytime you like by going to our website, aljazeera.com, for more discussion. There's our Facebook page, facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on Twitter, our handle @AJ Inside Story. From me, Martine, Dennis and the whole team here in Doha, it's bye for now.